Chapter 9 to 11 Raid. The streets of Hongdae were filled with young people, a place filled with the passion and dream of many young men and women. At Cafe Amoa in the heart of Hongdae, 4 men and women were gathered. They were dressed differently, and the atmosphere they gave off was entirely different from a common person. They seemed like a combination that would rarely gather together, but they were all tied by one common thing. All of them were awakened. In addition, each one of them were starters and a guild master. If only this place was Paris. We could have gathered in Paris and once the stores open. The woman in her mid-30s waved her hands. She was frowning slightly while talking about flying to Paris. Wavy, long hair, and charming lips. The beauty spot above the nose and slightly droopy eyes gave her a glamorous type beauty. Then the bald man wearing sunglasses and sitting opposite her smiled and said, "I like the quiet." "Then why did you pick the middle of Hongdae?" "I don't like noise, but my favorite thing is the vibrant energy of young people." "Does Miss Kim hate something like this?" The woman he called Miss Kim was actually Kim Suk-soo. Kim Suk-soo clicked her tongue. "Well, I don't dislike money. By the way, why are we all gathered here?" "Heaven's will." The woman nodded as she roughly guessed the story. "Ah, it is about Kim Yong-woo. Didn't he go crazy? I heard that he is ranting nonsense every day about ants. He used to call me ant excrement." "Oh my, excrement is a little harsh." Kim Suk-soo giggled and laughed. Then a young man with blonde hair raised a Coke to his lips and said, "Ajushi, don't humans become crazy every day? Quickly cut to the chase. I don't have time. I need to meet up with my team to decide a strategy to raid a dungeon." "Isn't the Mithril Guild closed?" Ajushi's information is slow. It resumed again yesterday. The guild members are having a hard time. Those who perished in the Philippines. Curiosity killed the cat. The strong young man knocked on the table. "Aish! Don't you know that country was being ruined by creatures and a broker arranged for me to enter by boat? I was clearly invited," Kim Suk-soo, who had been listening quietly, asked. "That reminds me, how is the area? I heard that martial law has been declared." "Noonim, don't even say it. Tanks are being called in." "Ah, and do you know that the creatures that are killed outside the dungeons don't drop cores? Do you understand?" The young man's words were completely different from how he previously spoke to the man wearing sunglasses. He was a young man, so Kim Suk-soo was a difficult opponent for him. "Really? That is really good news." Kim Suk-soo didn't have much of a reaction, so it seemed like she already knew. Exactly a week ago, large number of creatures came out from the dungeon in the Philippines. It was that there were 5,000 creatures. The civilians and awakened received damage. But after a few days, the military was organized and started to earnestly clean it up. It was natural considered the quality of the attack in the first place. But no cores dropped despite all the creatures killed. There was only one. There were numerous speculations, but the more reliable theory was that creatures needed to be killed in the dungeons. In other words, there was a close relationship between the dungeon and the core. Anyway, the awakened were glad to hear it. "By the way, what is with those cat-like scratches? Didn't the tanks wipe them all out?" "Well, one of them got lucky. I don't know much. It must have been a strong creature. Noonim, can we stop this topic? I'm feeling awful." "I'm sorry, Dongsang." Noonim was too short-sighted. Although he survived the raid, members of his guild had died, so he naturally felt sad. Unlike the United States, South Korea had no compensation for those who died in dungeons. All of the awakened that weren't in an institute had no choice but to go into the dungeon with nothing. Many of the rich and powerful showed an avid interest in the cores. If the guilds hadn't emerged, then the awakened in South Korea would have been their slaves. Let's return to business. There was silence until a mysterious woman spoke. She was a similar age to the young man, but she had a cold face, a tight skirt and blouse. She gave off the perfect impression of a cold city woman. "I met an awakened," the young man complained after hearing the man in sunglasses' words. "What about it? Those who haven't defeated creatures aren't real heroes. He took care of a monster beyond the normal standard all by himself." "Eh? Isn't that an urban legend?" "No, a dungeon legend." Kim Suk-soo covered her mouth as she smiled. "Omo, Dongsang, it is real. The monster. The young man made a shocked expression. Haven't they never been seen before? They exist. Dead people can't attend our meetings. Get down to business. Kim Suk-soo sighed. I'm not afraid of the Ice Princess. Hey, Alan, loosen up your expression. Don't you know that you will get a lot of wrinkles by the time you are my age? It appears one person has already heard the story. Alan and Kim Suk-soo stared at each other. The young man looked between them before sending a signal to Sunglasses. It asked him to proceed with the story. I've acquired information that indicates the awakened man is in heaven's will. Heol, Ajushi, he is a real person? Kim Yong-woo wasn't talking nonsense. There was a moment of silence between the four of them. Handling a monster beyond the normal standards alone. If it was true, it would be an overwhelming fact. The presence of these monsters weren't just mere legend. All the people who had intelligence networks had classified it as Class 1 confidential information. The fact that they were reluctant to talk about it meant it was important information. These people gathered due to necessity. He would blow her off like she was a fly. It really was like the sun rising in the west tomorrow. Sunglasses pulled his cool coffee closer and said, Of course, I can't be sure. It is just a high possibility. And if he is the same person, he isn't someone who can handle a creature beyond the norm. Even if 100 awakened are gathered, they would find it impossible to handle the creature. At the time, Kim Yong-woo was the lone survivor, so he must have seen something. Ajushi, aren't you worrying about needless things? No, it is clear that he has considerable skill. In addition, it is true that he bumped into a non-standard creature. Hey, let's say he really did meet a non-standard monster. So how did he come back alive? I think he holds a rare grade skill. Therefore, he could escape to the outside. Rare grade skill. They all swallowed their saliva. Just like the name, it was a rarity. At least it was in South Korea. The only known user of a rare skill was Chinese. Even the starters who woke up 8 months ago only had normal level skills. The man in sunglasses had an exceptional normal skill, improved muscle strength. Skills could be obtained through a particular type of work, certain actions against creatures, and completing difficult quests. Quests could be found on their own, but an updated list of quests also existed. Once a month, the quest list updated to coincide with the level of the awakened. Completing quests with difficulty levels 1 or 2 steps higher would give a skill. Sometimes a lot of luck and hard work was required. But hasn't he joined Heaven's Will? Ice Princess Alan said calmly. The 5 guilds had similar strengths. Respect was given to all sides. It was an unspoken law to not recruit members that had already joined a guild. The man raised his sunglasses. It is Kim Yong-woo alone who is making a fuss. They've never gone on a raid together. Then he can still be taken. Alin was convinced as she closed her eyes. She forgave him for calling this meeting of guild masters. Then the young man said with confusion, Ajushi, I don't understand. Why are you telling us? Isn't it better if you alone monopolize him? We aren't amateurs. If there is any ill will. Sunglasses scratched the bridge of his nose. I have failed. I was rejected before even speaking one word. I almost died. Even Ajushi fails at times. There are thousands of witnesses in the vicinity of the Heaven's Will Guild house. They lose their appetite as soon as they see me. Is Ajushi really going to give up? You haven't looked at him. My head would have been rolling on the floor of the restaurant if I said even one word. The young man's expression became determined. There was something they implicitly agreed on. Sunglasses was the strongest among those gathered here. In addition, they knew how obsessed he was with becoming strong. He would get whatever he wanted. A boiling spirit that never admitted defeat. Their hairs started to stand up. If this was true, then they absolutely needed to recruit his talent, even if they had to spend billions of won. Once he was drawn in, the balance between the 5 guilds would start to lean towards him. Maybe they could go up to the next floor. Obtaining the title of the first ones to arrive on the 2nd floor was a great achievement. It was the authorization that indicated they were the best guild in Korea. Since America's official announcement, the existence of the Awakened was known to everyone. A lot of people made movements behind the scenes. Now it was a world of dungeons and Awakened. As the Awakened obtained more cores, The people were forced to rely on them even more. And having the title of the strongest would be very useful. I only want one thing: information sharing about the rare skill. I don't want anything else. I will go first. The answer is yes. Alin stood up quickly. There was a red flush on her cheeks. Oh ho ho, it is already that time. I heard it well. I'm a yes. Kim Suk-soo followed suit. Ajushi, contact me separately. The young man was the last to leave. Sunglasses, who was left alone, leaned back in his chair and sighed. Really terrible eyes. He saw himself drop dead as soon as the other person glared. His breath became short as his spirit was lost. It felt like he was prying into a deep abyss. It seemed like a shower of sweat had flowed. His body trembled as he remembered those eyes. The sun at noon. I leisurely sat on a park bench and watched the people. Children were wandering around chatting, while it wasn't unusual to see the figure of a woman sweating. Peaceful. I was wearing rimmed sunglasses. Despite the existence of dungeons, they continued to live their normal lives. And if I didn't take any special actions, this peace would last for quite a long time. In my previous life, I randomly killed humans, and the peace ended too quickly. The areas around the dungeon became a wasteland. The city became ruins. But now I would change that. It was unacceptable to step on anyone like I did in my previous life. If they didn't point a sword at me, then I wouldn't become hostile. For the moment, it doesn't feel bad. Wasn't I once dead? Now I was free. Maybe that's why I felt more generous. I never imagined in my previous life that I would be blending in with humans. But now I was stronger than in the past. No, to be precise, I have the potential to become stronger. So I don't care. The strong were free. That's why I decided to become a warrior above all others. I needed to make an effort to become a real warrior. I don't know much about humans in modern times. I couldn't read their culture and behavior at all. It was natural. I had no interest in them in my previous life. Humans were just the prey of the creatures, but now things were different. Humans were still peaceful. Especially here in South Korea. Maybe it was because the threat of North Korea was stronger than that of the dungeons. Now I needed to pay attention to them. It was necessary to analyze and completely investigate them. So I spent time wandering and observing. It is easier thanks to Kim Yong-woo. I was able to save a lot of time. It happened suddenly when I emerged from the dungeon. A few pairs of eyes followed me as soon as I came out. They were Kim Yong-woo's hired messengers. He had drawn my outfit and rough appearance on a piece of paper, and they had been waiting for 2 weeks. His patience was worth praising. Everything became easier thanks to that. I met Kim Yong-woo at the guild house, and he proclaimed that he would be my subordinate. He worshipped me, and he knelt down and kissed my feet. The outrageous actions were all because I saved him. It had been shocking at the time. I didn't have anything to lose, so I humbly accepted. Kim Yong-woo seemed to be quite strong among the heroes. It wouldn't be bad to use him to accomplish my goal. I would be in a perfect position behind him. Receiving attention immediately wasn't desirable. Now that I have an ID, am I also a person from here? I took out my wallet and checked my identity. Kim Yong-woo had created an identity for him. My name and surname was still the same, but my status was listed as a returnee. When I was 9 years old, I left Korea for the United States and returned after graduating from Harvard University. Kim Yong-woo also graduated from Harvard in the United States. I was someone who didn't even receive a middle school education, so I didn't care about it, as long as my actions were free. Can I sit beside you? A woman I saw earlier came up to me and asked. I didn't turn my head, let alone answered, but the woman naturally sat next to me. She had been following me since I briefly stopped by Heaven's Will in the morning. An annoying woman has come. I clicked my tongue. At first glance, she seemed familiar, like he had seen her before. She was different when I knew her, but she was obviously the guild master of the Timely Rain Guild. But I gazed at the status window just to be sure. Name, Alan, occupation hero, archer. Title, none stats, strength 25, intelligence 34, agility 47, stamina 23, magic power 30. Potential, 169, 401. Uniqueness, timely rain. Guildmaster skill, aim, quick burst, N, indeed. There was no doubt. The clear eyes, sharp nose, and thin lips gave her a striking beauty that stood out. However, half of her face had been burned in a previous life. She was a terrible person who chased me more than anyone else. I could guess the reason why she chased after me. I was the cause behind the woman's burns, so when my dungeon was on the verge of ruin, the dungeon core was being threatened, so I hired a fire creature to guard it, wounding the woman. Thanks to that, the woman and her guild considered me an enemy that couldn't live together under the same sky. They continued to chase me and pushed me to the brink several times. In the end, I was the winner, but received intensive damage. It took me 1 year to recover. Our destiny has gone around. The Timely Rain Guild Master had come to meet him. I could get rid of her, but didn't. I had a hunch that things kept on moving around like a hamster wheel. If I didn't know about my previous life, the whole thing had now been initialized, so it was pointless to argue against it. If I joined hands, then I can figure out their intentions sooner or later. The woman flushed and lowered her gaze. I was using the full power of outstaring. I said lightly, "What do you want?" Then the ice-cold expression somewhat eased off. I talked first, so now I was waiting for a reply. Aylin took out a business card from her shoulder bag. Then she smiled and handed me the business card. "Contact me." Alan's eyes remained beautifully curved at my reaction. She got up and coyly stroked my shoulder. "Call, I'll be waiting." And she left without looking back. My forehead wrinkled as I was left alone. That human female, what was that? It was difficult to understand her intent. She visited just to give me a business card before departing. It was too inefficient. Why did she touch my shoulder before leaving? If she had a hostile attitude, then I could cope with it, but it wasn't apparent. Temptation? I don't know much about women. I had woken up on the battlefield. For 300 years, I only sought to become stronger. But one of the few things to be cautious of were beauties, especially on the battlefield. Those who held the beauties in their arms would be found dead the next day. Even the 4 Grand Dukes wouldn't think of playing that game. But it wasn't just the demon world. Just like demons liked slaughter, a succubus desired men and acted like battlefield scavengers. In my long life, those women were far away from me. The joy of becoming stronger was greater than the rent. Of course, my body had some experiences. I still had a libido. If I didn't occasionally indulge his body, then my mental state would go out of control. But such acts were done without any kind of special feelings. There was no special senses from my side. I recognized it myself. I am the wrong person to use that type of method on. Of course, I was curious about why Alan gave me a business card, but not enough to contact her. I abandoned the business card on the ground and stood up. If there was a business matter, then she would find me. If she didn't come, then I didn't need to go find her. Her potential was one of the highest among humans. Among all the people I've seen, she was among the top, someone with no greed or false nature. If her talents were raised, then she would bloom like a flower. However, I became sure of her character in her previous life, so she won't easily follow me. There were also more constraints because she was a guild master. I needed people to follow me in my own raids. Truly an elite minority, a party that would automatically follow me in the future. Now I need some experience with what humans call a raid. Alin was moved to a corner of my brain as I walked in the direction of the parking lot. Talkak! In the early evening, a dark room. The only light came from the monitor. I slowly moved the mouse to operate the computer. I wasn't very familiar with the small screen and machine. In the past, I had never used a computer, but I saw it a few times. I had become accustomed to it over the past few days, but I still felt uncomfortable using it. Duck, duck, do-duck. My index finger tapped the keyboard, the typical stance of an eagle. It was ludicrous to think I could use it quickly when I only touched computer a few days ago. It was to the extent that 300 strokes seemed to be used. I identified all the icons on the desktop. I adapted to the computer like cotton soaking up water. It was an indispensable necessity for people living in modern times, so I needed to learn it, even if it was by force. I need to look at an awakened online cafe to receive information about raids. Everyone had learned about the existence of the awakened due to the announcement from the United States. their strength and supernatural powers. Many people were enthusiastic and bombarded the portal sites about them. It was the same with the awakened. The majority became aware of each other's existence, and the awakened started to assemble. I heard from Kim Yong-woo that there was a cafe the awakened could subscribe to. The main portal site had articles associated with the awakened. Just pressing 3 letters on the keyboard would come up with the awakened as an associated search term. But the cafe where saints gathered wasn't something that could be found through a search. I pulled out a piece of paper from the wallet on my desk. A website address, ID, and password was written on the white paper. Here. The English words on the piece of paper was typed into the address bar and a black screen appeared. The only thing present was the login box in the center. ID and password. I clicked OK, and the background changed to the message Randolph Brigseal Nim. I sincerely welcome you. Then a bulletin board unfolded. VIP. The VIP status was displayed in the top left corner. Kim Yong-woo didn't just give me an ID, but also made sure I was authorized to view all the forums. I knew about it at the time. Usually a person would feel hesitant at this type of favor, but I was different. My style wasn't to decline anything given to me. However, I wouldn't receive it unconditionally. I gave him 1 core in return. It was a core he obtained from one of the random high-ranking creatures that appeared. Humans placed tremendous value on this core. It was the crystallization of pure mana. It didn't matter to demons and high-ranking creatures, but the 1/1s could absorb the opponent's core to grow stronger. I intended to play an active role in the human world, so I pack away any mana before the creatures in the dungeon could get to it. It is good that I packed it. I know that I gave a core with a huge value. Actually, Kim Yong-woo had broken into a sweat when I gave him the core. He had a considerable amount of money in his bank account if I took into account his car. It was cleanly washed and worth at least 5 billion won. In fact, Kim Yong-woo thought that was lacking. The level of the awakened right now meant they couldn't kill the creature that would drop this level of core. It was an extremely rare item. Thanks to that, I could relax in this house. Did he sell it at the secret auction in San Francisco? Curiosity rose, but I soon turned it off. Money was readily available, and the economy and currency would collapse in approximately 15 years. Even if I could stop it, I wouldn't. A lot. My eyes turned to the screen again. The homepage was flooded with various posts. A significant amount of real-time articles caused a new page after just 1 minute. There were quite a few awakened subscribed. If I wanted to view a specific article, then I needed to find a separate forum. First, I looked for basic information. There was basic information besides the names of each awakened. Some were locked, and when I clicked on them, a pop-up window stated that 100 points was required. I had 10 points. The information I required was easily accessible, so I didn't need a lot of points. The title was Dungeon Entrance Map. There was a reason why a dungeon master bought a map. The only person who knew the dungeon better than me was the fairy Yi-hee. I started to read the posts from the bottom. I want to know how much details are known. I was quickly disappointed. There wasn't any valuable information. It was an overview from the awakened about details of the creatures, how to obtain the core, and basic quest information. I didn't need that information. However, the urgent announcements at the top had some value. Emergence of the ale snake. Please note that they have a strong attack venom that causes paralysis. Check the attached list for pictures. Recently, the body of an awakened was found in the dungeon. Test results revealed that it was the result of an inside job. Please pay special attention to the other heroes on raids. A monster wave has started in China. Please click K on the link for more information. A monster wave referred to incidents where creatures emerged from the dungeon. The official announcements warned the awakened of dangerous information. After checking other minor things, he clicked on the forums for those seeking raid members. People can be found here. Sometimes I had questioned it. There was always a schedule for the humans who entered my dungeon. It turns out they could find a raid party here when they wanted. I have to admit this thing called the internet is useful. It was convenient. This was the language of a strong man, and I didn't want to. I wouldn't change my speech even if I was struck by lightning. My personality was made by nature, and there was no way to change it. Wasn't it hardened after 300 years? One day I might be able to adapt, but that time wasn't now. Should I go on a raid with Heaven's will? I shook my head. No, I can't give up. I am Randolph Briggseal, and I sent messages to all the posts. One of them would eventually cave in. Besides, I wanted to see a raid from the bottom. I wanted to view my dungeon from the perspective of a complete beginner. In addition, I had a deep desire to find hidden talents. The name of heroes from my previous life, but they weren't the only strong ones. There were those with high potential who died in the early days. I was looking for people like them. At this time, a new article was posted. More than 33 stamina. Recruiting for a raid group will be open for 6 minutes. Please note, 8 people are required for the raid. I've recruited 6 heroes, so there's only 1 position left. I sent a note just like before. A reply arrived 3 minutes later. Randolph Nim? Do you have experience in a raid? Of course, I had experience with a dungeon, a lot of experience, but I've never participated in a raid. I pressed the keyboard with a bittersweet feeling. This is my first time for a raid. Well, what occupation are you? I contemplated for a moment before replying roughly. Close combat. I understand. These days there aren't many beginners who would send a note, so I feel like I should help. Going on a raid, tomorrow at lunchtime, take exit 3 at Suyu Station and head to Street Cafe. Understood. Leave your number. Please text or call when you arrive. I was easily accepted. I sighed and leaned my body against the chair. I would feel more at ease fighting advanced creatures. Sending a simple note was almost like a war. In any case, my recruitment was completed. I would fight the creatures in a cool manner, and the other side would get a good impression of me. Tok, tok. The sound was coming from the clock on the wall. Kim Yong-woo had spent 5 billion won on a luxury villa in Cheongdam-dong for me. All the furniture and appliances were already in place. 114 pyong, unit of measurement. 5 rooms and 3 bathrooms. It was different from a castle, but everything I needed was stocked. I looked up at the ceiling. Everything was different now. I missed the company of Yihi, but her spiritual body was unable to escape the dungeon. Of course, I could always summon myself back to the dungeon. However, if I did that, then it wouldn't be easy to adapt. I could return after I adapted. Anyway, it was clear I would adapt quickly. The difference would help eventually. I closed my eyes. This evening would be exceptionally long.